Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Shinkara. Last year at E3 I got to play a lot of really great games, but the one I left saying was the most fun was Metal Gear Rising: Revengeance. Being able to cut down pretty much anything was such an amazing design choice. I only got to play a short segment, but what I did play made me want more. I couldn't wait to get back into the game and slice everything into a million pieces. I have to admit that I was never a Metal Gear Solid fan, and to this day I've never really played any of the games in the series. I know, bring on the hate, but stealth games with a slow pace were just never really my thing. However, when I heard about this side game starring Raiden being made by one of my favorite developers, Platinum Games, I was all in. My only concern was if Platinum Games could capture the fun from that demo I played and make it last for the length of a full game. I'm happy to report that they did it again and created a game that is just pure fun. Let's take a look and see how Raiden gets his Revengeance.
Let's get this over with.
In Revengeance, you play as the badass cyborg ninja Raiden on a mission to take down a group of terrorists. At the beginning of the game, you're assigned to protect a prime minister, but let's just say that things don't go so well. After things go south for Raiden and his cause, the title of the game makes a lot more sense and he's out for Revengeance. Yeah. If you haven't played any of the previous Metal Gear games, you won't be lost, mainly because the story is pretty nonsensical. Don't get me wrong, there are some parts that try to tug at your heartstrings a bit, but it's hard to take it seriously when the game drops lines like, wait a minute, was that a Ninja Turtles movie joke? The voice actors in the game do a great job of capturing their character's essence. You really feel extra incentive to slice enemy characters to bits. The voice actor for Raiden also does a fantastic job of capturing both his sympathetic side as well as his psychotic Jack the Ripper persona.
Huh. So you're Jack.
What do you want with the Prime Minister?
I want him dead. Nothing personal, of course. Africa's just getting a bit too peaceful.
In short, the story moves along well enough to keep the game going at a nice pace, but the plot is definitely not why you'll keep playing Revengeance.
How does it feel to fly like a bird?
Like a bird strapped to a remote control rocket.
We will get you in safely, Tovarich.
The real reason most people want to play this game is for the fast and frantic action. As this is a Platinum Games title, expect some flashy and oh so satisfying combat. You'll start with basic sword attacks and then progressively earn more abilities throughout the game. If you defeat bosses, you also unlock their weapons to use for yourself. The only thing that kind of bothered me about this was how you couldn't easily switch between them mid-combat. You'd have to pause the game and go into the menu. You can also pick up weapons like rocket launchers and grenades, but they're not nearly as fun to use, so you'll barely end up using them. Of course, the main draw for Revengeance is its Cut Anything Blade mode. In this mode, you slow down the gameplay to give you plenty of time to make precise cuts, or just do what I do, and slice everything into a million pieces as fast as you can. This is also how you refill your life and energy throughout the game. If you can slice a precise spot on the enemy, you can pull out their energy source and absorb it for yourself. You can also traverse the levels quickly by using Raiden's Ninja Run. Essentially, it allows you to run faster, deflect bullets, and hurtle objects in your way. There are some really fun ninja run sequences that have you running away from incoming attacks, and one where you're even running down the side of a building. Considering how much trouble Kojima's in-house team had designing a game around this cut-anything mentality, I feel like Platinum was able to craft something superb. Admittedly, they had to scale back the fidelity compared to the initial trailers for the game, as well as make certain parts of the level uncuttable for design reasons. If you really could cut down anything, I feel like designing a game that way would be mind-grain inducing. That all being said, this might be Platinum Games' finest outing yet. Revengeance is just pure fun, and that's why we all play games at the end of the day, right? The minute-to-minute combat is ultra satisfying, and the unique blade mode mechanic is cool enough to sustain your attention for the full duration of the game. I also want to address the subject of the game's length. Many outlets are reporting playthroughs as low as 4.5 hours, but that's just not correct. The way Revengeance records your playtime is really weird. It only records your best playthrough, ignoring the many times you died or restarted. In reality, you're likely to get 6 to 7 hours of your first playthrough, plus many more for repeat playthroughs and tackling the game's many VR challenge missions. While the combat in Revengeance is fun and flashy, the same can't be said about the environments. Outside of one level where you're in a Japanese-style garden, most of the levels are pretty drab. I suppose this style stays in line with past Metal Gear titles, but sometimes the levels are just ugly. There's a heavy use of grays and browns, which aren't all that appealing. It would have been nice to see more splashes of color throughout. As for the soundtrack in the game, oh man is it ever good. The mix of heavy rock and metal perfectly accentuate the intense battles, especially for bosses. Tracks seem to always hit just that right note during combat, getting you even more jacked up to slice through enemy cyborgs. It probably helps that I listen to this kind of music anyways, but I think most would agree that the soundtrack really rocks to help your adrenaline pump even more than it already was. It's also worth noting that Revengeance runs at 60 frames per second, which is rather rare for a console action game these days. It can slow down when there's a lot happening on the screen at once, but for the most part it runs silky smooth.
Unbelievable.
You had best hurry, Raiden.
Right.
Personally, I enjoyed DMC a lot more for its level designs and variety in combat, but it's hard to deny just how good Metal Gear Rising: Revengeance is. I can't emphasize enough how much fun Blade Mode is. As I sliced my way through droves of enemies, I often found myself laughing because of how much fun I was having. Few games in recent memory brought out that level of enjoyment for me. As I mentioned before, the game will probably take about 6 or 7 hours to finish, and maybe an additional 6 or 7 depending on how much you find yourself wanting to play through again and get the best scores for the VR missions. This will likely dictate your purchase for you if you haven't bought it already. Once the game does drop in price though, it's certainly worth a purchase. Platinum Games did a bang up job once again. Surprise, right? Well, that's going to do it for this episode of Shinkara. Thanks as always for watching everyone, and we'll see you next time.